You survived what no one could see. This is going to be a guided meditation for wives experiencing Cassandra Syndrome and relationship trauma. So welcome. For the next few minutes, you don't have to solve your marriage. You don't have to figure out what went wrong. You don't have to explain yourself or to decide what happens next. You don't even have to be strong. So for these few minutes, you're simply invited to rest. So find a position that feels comfortable. You can sit in a chair, lie down, curl up beneath a blanket, or just lean back and allow your body to be supported. There's no perfect way to do this. You've spent enough of your life wondering whether you were doing things the right way. Right now, just simply be here. And before we go any further, I want you to hear something that perhaps you've needed to hear for a very long time. You survived. You survived experiences that were difficult to explain to other people. You survived loneliness that sometimes occurred while another person was sitting only a few feet away. You survived conversations that left you questioning your own perceptions. You survived nights when your mind replayed the same argument over and over, trying to discover what you had missed. And you survived reaching for connection and sometimes feeling as though your hand came back empty. And perhaps hardest of all, you survived wondering whether you were asking too much when what you really wanted was something deeply human, to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel understood, to feel emotionally safe, to feel loved. Let's just take a pause with breath. Slow breath in, pause, gently breath out. There's nowhere you need to go right now. There's nothing you need to fix. Let's talk about the trauma no one could see. Relationship trauma doesn't always arrive dramatically. Sometimes there's no single event you can point to. Instead, it kind of accumulates, doesn't it? A little painful interaction there, and another painful interaction here, a misunderstanding there, a moment when you desperately needed comfort but didn't receive it in the way you needed, an argument that never really got resolved, a promise that things would be different, another disappointment, another attempt to explain, another night laying awake, and eventually the nervous system begins to learn something. Connection might not be safe. And so you begin watching. You begin listening, predicting, preparing. Maybe you learn to notice the small changes in tone of voice. Maybe you could sense tension before a single word was spoken. Maybe your stomach tightened when you heard footsteps coming down the hallway. Maybe you rehearsed conversations in your head before having them. Maybe you learned to carefully choose your words because you feared being misunderstood again. And maybe you stopped bringing certain things up altogether. And perhaps somewhere along the way, you began disappearing from your own life, not physically, but emotionally. Your needs became smaller. Your expectations became smaller. Your voice became quieter. And at some point, you may have told yourself, it's just not worth another argument. I'll deal with it myself. Or maybe I'm being too sensitive. Or maybe I expect too much. Or maybe this is just the way marriage is supposed to go. And eventually, you may have started wondering, maybe I'm the problem. But right now, I want to invite you to consider another possibility. Maybe you weren't weak. Maybe you were just adapting. Maybe your nervous system was trying to protect you. Maybe you were doing the best you knew how to do inside a relationship dynamic you didn't yet understand. Okay, let's stop here and take another breath in, please. Now, along the way, you became a survivor. There are strengths inside you that may have been forged during incredibly painful seasons. You learned endurance. You learned how to keep functioning when emotionally exhausted. You learned how to care for other people while your own emotional tank was nearly empty. You learned how to search for answers. You learned how to survive uncertainty. Perhaps you raised children, went to work, paid bills, made dinner, answered emails, attended school events, helped everyone else with their problems, and somehow kept going while a quiet voice inside you whispered, I don't know how much longer I can do this. And yet, here you are, not untouched, not unchanged, but you're here. You survived days you once thought might break you, and that matters. It reminds me of one of my clients, and her name was Sarah. She'd been married for 22 years. She told me that from the outside, her marriage looked fairly ordinary. Her husband worked hard. He wasn't intentionally cruel. He loved his family in ways he understood love. But Sarah felt profoundly alone. Whenever she tried to explain her feelings, the conversation seemed to become a debate about facts. If she said, I feel like we're disconnected, she said what she would hear was, we spent 3 hours together on Saturday. If she said, I need more affection, she often heard, well, I hugged you this morning. When she said, I'm hurting, the conversation sometimes shifted towards whether her interpretation of what happened was technically correct. Guess what happened to Sarah? She stopped trying. She became quieter, but inside she was screaming. And one evening, she sat alone in her car after grocery shopping. She just wasn't ready to go home yet. She turned off the engine and simply sat there, and she cried. Not because anything terrible had happened that particular day. She cried because thousands of little moments had accumulated inside her. And she whispered to herself, what has happened to me? That question eventually became the beginning of something very important for her. She began learning about neurodiverse relationships. She began understanding that some of the painful dynamics in her marriage had explanations she had never considered. But she also learned something equally important. Understanding someone else's nervous system didn't require abandoning her own. Compassion didn't mean pretending she wasn't hurting. Understanding differences didn't mean eliminating her needs. And acknowledging her ASD husband's challenges didn't mean invalidating her experience. Over time, Sarah stopped asking, who is the bad person here? And she began asking, what do I need in order to become emotionally healthy again? And that question changed everything, not overnight. Healing rarely works that way, but slowly, one boundary, one honest conversation, one supportive friendship, one afternoon spent doing something she loved, one moment of self-trust, one breath at a time. Yeah, your story may be different. Your marriage may not look exactly like Sarah's. Perhaps your ASD partner understands your pain. Perhaps they don't. Perhaps you're rebuilding your marriage. Perhaps you're questioning it. Perhaps you're separated. Perhaps you're still trying to understand what happened. You don't have to know the ending today. Healing doesn't require having your entire future figured out. Sometimes healing begins with something much smaller. It begins when you stop abandoning yourself. So let's take another breath. Breathe in. Slowly release. Notice that your heart is still beating. After everything you've carried, your heart is still here. She is still here. She walked through rooms where silence screamed and carried hopes that no one dreamed. She learned to smile when days were long and wondered quietly what went wrong. She reached for love. She reached for light. She searched for answers late at night. She bent so far, she lost her way, then found herself one breath one day. And somewhere underneath the fear, a quiet voice said, I'm still here. Not who she was, not yet who she'll be, but slowly remembering I still belong to me. So breathe, dear heart. The night will end. Your soul can heal. Your heart can mend. The road ahead may not be clear, but you survived. You're still here. Now you're allowed to grieve. There may be grief inside you, grief for the marriage you thought you would have, grief for conversations you wished had gone differently, grief for years spent trying to solve something you didn't understand, grief for the version of yourself who worked so hard to keep everything together. You don't need to rush that grief. Grief isn't proof that you failed. Grief is simply love acknowledging that something mattered. So if tears come, let them come. You don't have to analyze them. You don't have to explain them. Okay, let's take another breath. And now something new. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a long road. Behind you are all the years you've already lived, the arguments, the confusion, the loneliness, but also the birthdays, the laughter, the children, the holidays, the memories, the good moments, the complicated moments, the moments that don't fit neatly into categories. You don't have to erase your past in order to heal from it. You can honor what was beautiful and acknowledge what hurt. Both can be true. Now, imagine turning toward the road ahead. You can't see very far. That's okay. You don't need the whole map. You only need the next step. Perhaps that step is learning to trust your feelings again. Perhaps it's setting a boundary. Perhaps it's reconnecting with friends. Maybe it's asking for help or rediscovering something you used to love or simply getting a good night's sleep. Whatever your next step is, it belongs to you. Now, I want to leave you with a few truths. You are allowed to have needs. You're allowed to want emotional connection. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to stop explaining yourself to people who refuse to listen. You're allowed to learn healthier ways of communicating. You're allowed to forgive without forgetting what you learned. You're allowed to love someone and still acknowledge that you've been hurt. And you're allowed to have compassion for your ASD partner without abandoning compassion for yourself. And you're allowed to become someone new. Relationship trauma may have shaped part of your story, but it doesn't get to write the final chapter. There's more of you left. There's more laughter, more peace, more discovery, more friendship, more purpose, more mornings when you wake up and your first thought isn't about the marriage, more moments when you catch yourself laughing and suddenly realize, oh, I haven't felt this light in a long time. Those moments can and will return. One last breath. Now, we're going to close with this, and I want you to repeat after me. I want you to quietly say to yourself, I survived. I'm healing. My feelings matter. My needs matter. My story matters. I'm learning to trust myself again. I don't need to solve everything today. I'm allowed to rest. I'm allowed to hope. I'm still here. Now, whatever brought you to this meditation today, I hope you remember this. There's a difference between being wounded and being finished. You may have been wounded. You may have been exhausted. You may have lost pieces of yourself along the way. You're not finished. The woman you were before all of this isn't necessarily the woman you need to become again. There may be another version of you emerging now. Another version that's wiser, more discerning, more compassionate toward herself, less willing to disappear to keep the peace, more comfortable trusting what she knows, more willing to receive love rather than endlessly proving that she doesn't deserve it. You don't have to become her today. Just take one step toward her, and then another, and another. One day, one choice, one boundary, one act of self-compassion, one breath at a time. Your story isn't over. There's still pages waiting for you. And some of them may be far more peaceful than anything you can imagine right now. One final breath. Come back to the present moment. Come back to yourself. I hope this was helpful. Please like and subscribe, because I will be doing this again soon, and I don't want you to miss out.
We've been counting the wrongs like tally marks on the wall. Holding on to anger don't heal nothing at all. Every little slide, every word that cut too deep, I've been dragging it behind me, losing nights of sleep. But I'm laying it down, let the past roll away. I'm tired of carrying the weight of yesterday. Love don't bloom in the shadow of pride, so I'm letting go of resentment tonight. Gonna let it ride. We've both said things we wish we could rewind, but I see your heart still beating right here next to mine. What's the use in fighting if forgiveness never comes? I wanna dance in the light, not march to the drums. So I'm laying it down, let the past roll away. I'm tired of carrying the weight of yesterday. Love don't bloom in the shadow of pride, so I'm letting go of resentment tonight. Gonna let it ride. Life's too short for fences built too high. I'd rather hold your hand than hold on to the wire. If mercy is the seed, then maybe love's the rain. We can grow something stronger when we let go of the pain. I'm laying it down, let the past roll away. Taking back tomorrow from the hurt of yesterday. Love feels sweeter when our hearts open wide. I'm letting go of resentment tonight. I'm gonna let it ride. Yeah, I'm letting it ride, right here by your side.
Some of you may not know that I have a lot of books on Amazon. So if you like my videos, you'll like my books. I have several for ASD spouses, for NT spouses, and for the neurodiverse couple. Underneath any of my videos, you'll see this link. Feel free to click on that link and see what's available. I'm sure you'll find something that applies to you. So if you're struggling in your neurodiverse marriage, help is available, one click away.